Patrick Yalung is the Washington Region President for Wells Fargo and Company. We have invited Patrick here today to introduce our featured speaker, John Stumpf. Please welcome Patrick.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't think of anyone else more qualified to speak at this event and share his thoughts on the future of our industry than John Stumpf. Please join me in welcoming John.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for that wonderful welcome, Patrick. You read it just like I wrote it. Yeah. So I am from this small town in northern Minnesota, but a large family. In fact, this town has probably fewer people than in this room today, but we made up from it because of this large family. I'm one of 10 children, or 11 children. I have 10 siblings, and I'm the second oldest of this group. And I live in San Francisco now, and San Francisco, I just can't understand that many people. Was it a commune? I said, no, this was like a family. And I get always two questions. First question is, how many bathrooms did you have in that house? Which is a pretty darn good question. And the answer is we had one. Well, we had an outhouse. We had 1.5. But you would never go, if you went in the outhouse after Halloween, they wouldn't find you until Mother's Day. So you didn't do that. But the more interesting question is, how many bedrooms were in this house? And the answer is we had 2 bedrooms upstairs. We had a bedroom, the north room we call it, where my 4 sisters slept. And we had a south room where I slept with my 6 brothers. Now, in the south room, you could fit 3 double beds. And back those days, 7 was not divisible by 3. So you had to improvise. So 2 of the beds had 2 boys per bed, but in the bed since I was the oldest, I slept in the middle, and my brother Stephen slept on my left, my brother Philip slept on my right. And that's just the way life was. In fact, I never got a chance to sleep alone until I got married. All right. If you're going to be difficult, then we're going to have a real trouble here today. This must be Rotary International for me this month. A month ago, I was invited to Birmingham, Alabama, a big market for us. We're going to be doing a conversion there because Wachovia had a big business there. And when I was introduced by Hatton Smith, who runs the Royal Cup, he said, "This is the 2nd largest Rotary on the planet." And I said, "What's the largest one?" He said, "Seattle, Washington." So I get number 1, number 2 all within a month. So I'm honored to be here. In fact, it's nice to be invited out. Bankers don't get invited out a lot these days. You know, we caused the economic downturn, the swine flu, the avian flu, the Gulf spill. It's all our fault. But in seriousness, let me share 3 things. And I have a timekeeper in front of me. And when I was a kid, I used to go to church. The preacher would take his watch off and put it on the pulpit. And I asked my dad, "What does that mean?" My dad said, "Not a darn thing." That preacher could speak forever. So I hope this means something today, but I'll watch my watch. I want to do 3 things today. I want to introduce our company to you just for a brief minute. I want to talk a little bit about our industry and rebuilding and re-earning the confidence of the American public. And then I want to talk about what the heck is going on with this economy. Why does it feel so challenging at this point in the recovery? Wells Fargo celebrated its 158th birthday on July 13th. You might not know this, but Wells Fargo was actually started by a guy named Wells and Fargo. And these 2 guys started American Express in the 1840s. 1851, late in the year, they decided that they wanted to expand the business west of the Mississippi. And the rest of the shareholders said, "Nah, that's not going to work." They said, "Yeah, I think it probably will." So they sold their American Express stock. They organized the business in April of 1852, and they started business with 1 office in San Francisco in the same corner that we office right now in the financial district, 420 Montgomery in California. And they started that business, and by 1917, they had 10,000 offices, mostly in the western part of the country, but across the country, and they would move products and services between point A and point B at a record 5 miles an hour. And then in 1917, the federal government, as part of the World War I effort, nationalized, took all their businesses, all their offices but one. So we're a little leery about all this, financial reform going on. We've been here once before. But the company, from those very humble beginnings, has been serving Americans and helping the American way of life through now almost 160 years, 16 decades. The new Wells Fargo is a half a cup of Norwest, where I came from in Minnesota. It's a couple of teaspoons of First Interstate. It has a little bit of First Security in. It has a whole bunch of Wachovia in, and of course, our namesake, Wells Fargo and Company. Today, we are the fourth largest bank in the country. I don't like to talk about size, but we might as well get it over with right now. We serve 1 in 3 Americans. We originate 1 in 4 mortgages in America. We are considered one of the strongest banks in the world. Last year, all 8,000 banks in the country earned a combined $12.5 billion of earnings. We earned 12.3 of it. Our market capitalization was the largest of all banks in the United States up until a few months ago. Today, we're basically number 2. We're the 40th largest bank in the world, and yet last year we were the second most profitable, and I think our market cap was in the top 3 or 4. And the reason it's that way is because we don't put the stagecoach in front of the horses. Our reason for getting up in the morning, taking a shower, hopefully taking a shower, and going to work is not to make money. Stunning. Well, I thought it was your business. No, our business is not. Our business is to serve customers. We listen to dreams. We help families who dream of owning a home, educating children, preparing for retirement, small businesses, adding a product line. That's the reason we get up and go to work in the morning, to serve customers. The result is we make money. Too many in our industry thought their reason for getting up in the morning was to make money, and they would do it at any cost. And in many cases, they put their customers in harm's way so they could make money. People ask me, how did Wells Fargo escape the big downturn in housing? After all, we were the #1 mortgage lender for most of the last decade. What did you know that others didn't know? We didn't know this was going to turn down this way. I had no idea. But we knew that if you made a loan to someone who couldn't pay you back, it wouldn't be in their interest and it wouldn't be in our interest. We didn't do that. We didn't do a lot of the leveraged stated income. We didn't do option arms, negative AM, where you could owe more on your house than what you start with. Your interest payment's $1,000 a month, but you're paying $200 and the other $800 goes to your principal. How can that possibly be good for a family? We think of our company really as serving 4 constituencies. Our team members, we don't call them employees. They're too important to be called an employee. Almost denotes an expense to be managed. They're team members, asked to be invested in. Our customers are our friends. We serve 1 in 3 Americans. Last year, we're the 19th largest revenue producer. We were the 9th largest earner. We're the #2 company in terms of philanthropy. Only 1 company in America gave more than we did, and just by a skosh, even though we're the 19th largest revenue producer. It's so natural to us. We have agricultural roots. We understand you can't harvest unless you plant. 18,000 nonprofits serving those who are desperately in need. People we'll probably never meet and never ever know, but it's important to us that they live with some sense of dignity and safety so they can enjoy some of the American dream and we can share some of our gifts. We're the 12th largest employer, but our team last year gave more money in the United Way than any other corporation in America, because we also understand that with our team. And finally, we want to provide a handsome return to our shareholders who give us their capital. Warren Buffett's our largest owner, owns about 8% of our company. I play bridge with him online. I know him well. He's a terrific human being. I'll give you one quick Warren story. So I'm having lunch or dinner with Warren 5-6 years ago. We're in Omaha, and yes, it's a T-bone steak with a side of chicken parmesan with mashed potatoes, all the trimmings. Food comes. and I'm from Minnesota, so I understand what snow looks like. He grabs a salt shaker with both hands, and I thought it's snowing. I mean, there's salt flying everywhere. I say, Warren, have you ever heard of too much sodium in your diet? I said, what's your doctor say? He says, I don't go to doctors. Real guy. No directions and no doctors, you know. He's my kind of guy. And I said, Warren, you're 79 years old now or whatever, you know. I said, you ought to really go see a doctor. And I said, is longevity in your life? He said, no, actually, my father died in his 50s from colon cancer. I said, Warren, you simply must get a colonoscopy. He said, did it 10 years ago. They took a colon out. No, I'm perfect. And he said, I went in the hospital with a colon. I came out with a semicolon. That's pretty darn funny. Moving on, our industry is under a lot of stress and pressure, and most of the world believes that the United States caused the global downturn, and many Americans think that financial services was the epicenter of our economic problems today. And clearly, financial services played a role. And clearly, there were folks in our industry who did not behave well. And today, we have a regulatory reform bill that members of Congress, the administration are patting themselves in the back and the backside and everything, and this is going to cause all the bad things to go away. And there are parts of the bill that I think they got right, but there are parts that look like much more about punishment as opposed to protection. If you put somebody out here next to Pike's Market with a big sign and say, tell me what happened in the downturn, they'd stand there for 2 years before somebody said, it's those darn debit fees that those banks charge the merchants. That's what caused the downturn. That's a prominent part of the bill. But that person wouldn't stand there for 5 minutes before somebody would say, wasn't housing a big part of this downturn? And how about those two companies in Washington that we're pouring billions into called Fannie something and Freddie something? They'd have it right. There's not a word in regulatory reform about those two. Not a word. So what's that mean? It means that there's a new normal for our industry. We have to work hard to rebuild the trust of the American people, sometimes for sins that our particular companies didn't do. We think Wells Fargo got it mostly right during this downturn, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We bought Wachovia with our own money, no special help from the federal government. We're employing people. Of our 280,000 team members, 276,000 are here in America. We're an American company, and we're proud of that. We provide health care, and we believe we're the kind of company and providing the kind of leadership that the industry needs. Let me move on to the economy for a bit, and then I would love to hear from you. I'll have 5 or so minutes for questions that you might have. As Patrick said, this is my third rodeo, my third downturn. I got in the industry at 75. By 1980, interest rates went to 21%. The prime did. And there was a big economic downturn. There was another big downturn, late 80s, early 90s, depending where you were. There was a mini downturn in 2000 when NASDAQ went from 5,000 to 1,200. But this one feels very differently. And it's hard to describe this one without sharing more information. And today we are, from a economist perspective, we're in recovery because we have positive GDP. But it doesn't feel that way. There is this big chasm between what Wall Street is enjoying, which is kind of a euphemism for corporate America, and what Main Street is feeling, which is a bit of a euphemism for jobs and what small business is feeling. First of all, 9.5% of Americans who want to work are not working. That's 15 million of the 150 million are not working. Another 15 million or so are working less than they would like to, either being furloughed a day or two a month, young students who are not coming out of school because they can't find a job anyhow, people who are more senior in their roles who are outsized, downsized, someone-sized, medium-sized, and they've lost their job and they can't get a job, or those who are educated at a level that they're not working. They're working at something far less just to get a job, just to have something to do. So we've got that. That's a high number, and it's persistently high. We need over 100,000 jobs a month just to keep the percentage flat. We need 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 jobs a month, new jobs, to start to take a whack at the 9.5%, and we're not seeing that. And why are we not seeing that? Well, this recovery is different in that we went into this downturn with too much debt. The last 10 years, families outlived their means. Many families, not all, but many. Cities outlived their means. Municipalities did, states did, the federal government did. We have too much debt. And today, we're starting to pay off some of that debt. And people are not spending. If they're spending very carefully. So we're deleveraging at a time when we need people to start spending. We went from a nation that was a spending nation, no savings, to last month where Americans saved over 7% of their take-home pay. We did it all over one weekend. We've gone from a spending nation to a savings nation. That's a good long-term solution. It's very difficult in the short term. My dad will be 88 years old next month. My mom's in her mid-80s. She's still fussy about her age. She's in her mid-80s, let's say. But they're both children of the Great Depression. They never had any money. All that they did was produce kids. But their idea about consumption was fashioned by their experiences as children going through the Great Depression. I don't know what we're going through. I don't know if they're going to call this just a Great Recession, a really bad downturn. My suspicion is it's going to change the DNA of the American consumer for a generation. The third thing that's going on is that, unlike my first downturn, where about 22 or 23% of what we produced every year was manufactured, today it's less than 10%. We don't make stuff in America anymore. So what typically happens in a bubble burst, pick your asset class, stocks, commercial real estate, energy, this happened to be residential real estate, goes up, 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 it bursts, boom, comes down. The federal government then takes over when the private sector is on the sidelines. Fiscal and economic stimulus come in. They increase the money supply, make money cheap. Inventories get drawn down. Companies build plants, buy equipment, hire workers so they can replenish their inventories, and it gets the economy going again. What do we do this time? We order it from overseas. And the stuff we manufacture, housing, is the problem to begin with. It's hard to build a house from Mumbai. But it's, and that's, we're not doing a lot of that. So the manufacturing sector is not that big a player. So we've never gone through a recovery before with such a dominant part of our economy based on, distribution and retail and so forth. We're up to 10. Okay, I've got hand signals going here, so I know I'm 10 minutes from getting the hook. The other thing, and this is really important, and I tell you right now, I'm not an R, I'm not a D, and I'm very much in favor of making this country as successful as it possibly can be. I want this president to be successful. I want this Congress to be successful. But today, the chasm between the public sector and the private sector is so glaring and so obvious, and it's not good for America, and it's not good for business. One thing that we have to understand, governments don't create jobs. Governments create the environment where the private sector creates jobs, or the private sector sits on their assets and don't create jobs. That's a banker joke. I know it's not that funny, but and today, with what's going on with tax policy, financial services reform, health care, cap and trade, all the other things is causing, I think, at least I hear this from business all the time, and I just met with some of the business leaders here in Seattle a couple hours before this meeting now. There's $1.4 trillion of cash sitting on companies' balance sheets that sits in our banks and other banks. It's flowing, coming over the transom, and people are not investing because businessmen, small, large, men and women, are not willing to put their money at risk when they don't know what to expect out of Washington. So we've got to find a way to not vilify business, vilify each other, and come together as a country. And lest we get too discouraged, I happen to live in San Francisco now, all the way from the farm, and I happen to have a small apartment on top of Russian Hill. And out my window, one of my very small windows, I see an unobstructed view of the Golden Gate Bridge. And she stands there in all her majesty. And that bridge was conceived and built and opened at the height of the Great Depression. This can be the next greatest generation. We can seize this moment. We can come together. We can solve our problems. We have enormous assets. We're the reserve currency of the world. What happened when Greece and the so-called pigs of Europe threw up this spring? Money came rushing into the U.S. as a safe haven. We're 1/3 of the world's economy. It's the safest and freest, society on the planet. It's a place that families with means want to send their children to get educated. There still are many, many opportunities out there that are still disguised as problems that we can seize and take this country to the next level. And for all of you here who are my colleagues at Wells Fargo, thank you for showing up. For those of you who are customers and customer wannabes, thank you for doing business with us. You honor us. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.